Hello everyone, my name is Spookydood, and welcome to another Deltarune video. Wait a second. Where could my pipe be? Image friend! What's the deal with the evil cat from hell made of circles that kidnaps children in Deltarune? Now, I'm sure you think I'm exaggerating, but what I just described is in fact the fandom's general understanding of Friend, a Satan-worshipping kidnapping cat who may or may not be the key to all the lore. Part of me thinks that Friend could be a Gaster-level character, but another part of me thinks that the fanbase is going a little too far for what will eventually be a meaningful side character. Today, I'd like to sort this all out and determine exactly what Image Friend is, what it means for him to be the pointed tail, and what exactly he wants from all of this. My name is Spookydood, make sure to like and subscribe, now let's discuss. The best place to start with Image Friend would be at the beginning. For those of you who aren't caught up and don't understand why an evil cat that looks like this is even something being discussed, what exactly is Image_Friend? Well, the first time we see Friend, the very first time, is in Spamton's basement, and with the hindsight provided by chapters 3 and 4, we can now determine that Spamton's basement is at least a tiny bit more important than we initially thought. Post-Chapter 2, discussion about the basement revolved primarily around Mike. Remember, Spamton mentioned Mike several times, establishing him as an important character who was not only part of Spamton's backstory, but was also tied to Chapter 3. This face that appeared in the basement, then, was associated with Mike, considering it was really the only loose thread that existed regarding Spamton. After digging, it was revealed that the face also appeared in an unused Birdly attack, with a very small chance to appear. So, what's the deal? Well, again, at the time it was widely assumed to be Mike, but now that we know that, well, it's most likely not true, he seems to be a much more important character than just a side character who played some role in Spamton's backstory. The next time we see Friend is in the intro to Chapter 3. When Rouse describes what the Dark Worlds are, and talks about the shadows growing and becoming living things, we see Image Friend fade into view, his face on top of what looks like one of the amalgamates. Following this, in the Mantle minigame, if you slash the trees next to the starting area, you can find 2 out-of-the-way rooms that contain Friend's face, alongside a specific laugh. A laugh now associated with Friend due to it being used in several places where he is. Next, while actually fighting John Mantle, he summons little friend blobs that chase after you. When killing them, they do his signature laugh. In the third sanctuary, in an all-black room, you can reveal Friend's face up on one of the walls. Finally, in the Batat minigame, where you collect cats while screaming bloody murder into your microphone, there's a chance to spot Friend there as well. So, what's this thing's deal? Well, starting at the center of the Friend Association board, I guess, all we know so far is that it exists. It smiles, it has pink and yellow eyes, and a signature laugh. The first thing we found out, though, was that it's associated with Gaster in some way. Some of you may already know this, some of you may not, so I'll quickly summarize. There are certain files relating to Deltarune working as a program tied to the file select, the Garner Maker, the intro, and more, that are all explicitly tied to Gaster. Based on their naming scheme, that is. The common fan theory is that Gaster actually created these files one way or another, as a way to connect us to Deltarune. They're all part of his device or whatever. So then, it's important to recognize that one of these oddly named files is, in all caps, Image_Friend, as well as Device_Friend. This means that in some way, Friend is tied to Gaster. Was Friend created by Gaster? Is Friend a part of the Deltarune program? Is Friend a separate entity not working with Gaster but worming his way into the program? Well, we're not so sure yet, but I have ideas. So he's associated with Gaster. What else? That laugh is important because it appears in one other non-Friend related place, the Knight. The Knight laughs like this in Chapter 4. This is clearly the Friend laugh. What could it mean? That Dess and Friend are 2 of a kind, somehow made of the same stuff? That Friend is a Knight-like entity? That the Knight is Friend? Well, that might be a bit of a stretch, but there's definitely something there. Moving forward, we do need to talk about the cat stuff. You might be wondering, okay, this Friend guy is clearly important, but why does everyone think he's a cat? Well, that all comes down to the Spamton sweepstakes. This was before Chapters 3 and 4 gave Friend a much more prominent role. In the Spamton sweepstakes page with the chair, where it asks the question, what if it could get darker than dark, clicking on the chair enough times results in a jump scare of Friend's eyes with the laugh. Friend also had the chance to appear in the Catpetter's minigame of the Spamton sweepstakes too, right before the chapters came out. But the bulk of the Friend speculation was due to Noelle's blog posts. I'm going to preface this by saying that Chapters 3 and 4 made pretty much everything in the sweepstakes relevant to the story, except for a handful of things. Even the story about Dess burning out the eyes of the Ice-E pizza box could be argued to be a teaser, as what is the name of the theme that plays when fighting Eram? Burning Eyes. What I'm saying is the sweepstakes didn't show anything that wasn't planned to pay off, so there's a chance that this last blog post is also relevant. In one of Noelle's blog posts, she talks about Catpetter 2, which is a computer game that Noelle played as a kid. It's a game where you take care of a pet and raise it. Noelle actually talks about the way that Catpetter looks, which is relevant. She says for people that don't know the game, it has a special visual style. All the pets are made of circles that get animated around. One circle will be the head, another the eyes, another the pupil, another the body, etc. The easiest way to explain this is to show you the real-world game Catpetter is clearly based on. A pair of games called Dogs 2 and Cats 2, released in 1997. Here you can clearly see the visual style that was being referenced. Hey, I have a job for you, by the way. Go look this game up on the internet and try to find actual footage. I did, and it's like, nowhere? I can't find any good videos, any good screenshots. It's on eBay for like 20 bucks, but like, come on, man, am I really gonna do that? Anyways, back to the blog posts. There are 3 relevant posts about Catpetter 2. One that just talks about the general idea of loading mods used to provide context for the other 2 posts, one that implies Noelle got a spam email worded in the way that Spamton speaks, containing a code for a Peepus pet that multiplied until her game broke, and one other one. If you have no pets, it's known that there's a rare chance for an egg to appear giving you a random pet. This is the only way to get some of the secret cats in the game, which are still super rare on top of that. So it's a lot of waiting for eggs, hatching them, and throwing away tons of cats trying to get the perfect character. This caused other problems, but I'll explain that another time. But one day, when I was trying to get the ultimate cat, something weird happened. A white egg showed up on my screen, but there was a message with it. Special. I was really excited. I've never gotten a special egg before. In fact, I'd never even heard of it at all. I sat there for an hour waiting to see what it would turn out to be. Maybe I would be the first one to discover a brand new cat. But what was weird is the egg never hatched. I started to worry that it was some kind of glitch, so I decided to try and get rid of it before it hurt my computer, and that's where things got really strange. No matter what I did, I couldn't move or throw away the egg. I tried clicking it over and over, and in the end, all that happened is it made some sort of weird sound. This freaked me out so much I deleted the game and reinstalled it, but the egg was still there. Now that I'm older, I think what happened is I had so many mods installed that the egg didn't know what to hatch into, but at the time I thought my computer was haunted or something, or the egg was going to kill me. After a few hours of freaking out, I eventually faced my fears and loaded up the game again. The egg was there, but it didn't seem to be doing anything, so I started raising it like it was a normal pet, brushing it and playing with it and stuff. By the end of the day, I actually started thinking it was a cool pet, and maybe I should try and figure out how to upload it online as a mod. I wasn't able to do that, though. The next day when I opened the game, the egg was gone, with a message that said it left home due to happiness. Usually the message is, pet left home due to sadness, and only happens when you neglected your pet. It's not supposed to happen because you were nice. One last thing. The egg actually had a name, but I don't remember what it was. It's been driving me crazy ever since. If anyone else has ever seen an egg in their game like this, please sign my guest book. Please. First one gets 100 cheesy points from me. So, what's the deal? There's a link on this post that eventually brings you to the minigame from the Sweepstakes 2 where Friend appears, loosely linking them together. But there's another thing. In Chapter 4, we hear the Organics talk about the tale that must be followed, T-A-L-E, aka the prophecy, as well as the T-A-I-L that must not be followed, the tale that must not be followed. Afterwards, we see the prophecy that says they'll see the tail of hell take crawl. This tale, of course, is made entirely of circles, thus linking Image Friend to the description of the cats from Noelle's blog posts. So, okay, Image Friend is some sort of, haunting image that appears throughout the entire game. He appeared in the sweepstakes, including being linked to the one Noelle Catpetter's blog post that doesn't have an explicit answer. He's also in the minigame in Chapter 4, which, by the way, is seemingly a Catpetter's minigame, as Noelle mentions that the minigames in Catpetter's were named weird things like Jongler. So, okay, Image Friend is a cat that may be from hell. But the idea that he's evil? Well, in a secret room in Chapter 4, a room that can only be accessed through the egg window, you see this Organic, who says in a scrambled-up sentence, "Lost where the forest would grow, the children followed the pointed tail." The poor children. Next to this is a picture of the prophecy, saying, "Roots. A house sits in between 2 trees." First off, this image seems reminiscent of the house from the Real World Pets game. Second, the word roots appears in 3 places. Spamton's basement in a song called Digital Roots, inside the Mantle minigame's final dungeon in a song called Bit Roots, and Bibliox, who names song titles, happens to name Roots alongside 2 other song titles that haven't been used yet, but clearly tie to flowers. But wait, there's more. What you don't realize is that this single room kind of connects Friend to everything. First off, the pointed tail is most likely referencing Friend. Remember the Tail of Hell prophecy? Well, in the files, an unused image shows a similar tail with a sharp point on the end that was originally supposed to be used here. In the sweepstakes 2, there is a page called The Poor Children. If you click around enough, the man's tree appears. Clicking on it takes you, I kid you not, to the Noelle blog post where she talks about the special egg. Clicking on the link on this page, again, eventually takes you to the Catpetter's minigame. Holy cow, Friend is most likely the tail from hell. Lost where the forest should grow, the children followed the pointed tail. Friend is the pointed tail, the tail that should not be followed. This sentence, lost where the forest would grow, the children followed the pointed tail, is connected to the man behind the tree who provides eggs. That, by the way, is tied to Chris's backstory. Chris went to art therapy, after all, to come to terms with whatever they had seen. They try to draw a picture, but ultimately a big tree covers whatever they've drawn. So then, Friend is tied to December, the night. Friend is supposedly from hell. Friend is tied to Spamton and his basement. The mantle minigame, Catpetter is whatever happened in Chris's past, Gaster, the Dark Worlds in general, the Eggman, and more. I'm going to tell you what I think. I think Friend is the key to all of this. Before chapters 3 and 4 came out, I said that there were so many storylines and I had no idea how they'd all come together. Well, I think I know now. Sitting at the very center of the entire story is Image Friend, the Tail of Hell. This is how Deltarune will tie everything together. The most common theory that I've seen, based on all this evidence that I've provided, is that Friend is the one who caused December to get lost. Keep in mind, we still don't have an answer as to what exactly happened to her. We used to think she either ran away, died, or fell into the code like Gaster. She's not exactly dead and she didn't run away, so it looks like the third option might be what happened. She got gonerified, turned into the night, fell into the code, whatever. Darkness transformed her into something else. Now consider the story so far. It seems as if Chris's inner demons relate to whatever happened to December. Perhaps they felt responsible for whatever it was that happened. It seems that this is why they went to art therapy. Something that happened behind a tree. I'm going to say something that's a bit of a stretch. Take this for what you will. This is, grain of salt for a moment. I don't actually think there was anything that happened behind a tree, because I think there never was a tree. The tree is a mental block created in Chris's mind to shield themselves from the truth of what they saw. If you actually reread that story about them sketching the picture, the way it makes it sound is that they try to sketch what they saw, but at the end of the day, they paint a tree over it, covering it, making it into a still life, rather than having to look at what's behind it. That, to me, is mental blockage. Like, I'm going to, create this tree to not have to remember what I saw. After all, they were lost where the forest would grow, not where the forest did grow. So what did they see? Well, lost where the forest would grow, the children followed the pointed tail. The poor children. They followed the tail of hell that must not be followed, and whatever happened, it led to the traumatic incident that Chris saw. I don't think it's as simple as that, though. Obviously, Asgore claims to have seen something that nobody believes. Whatever it was that he saw, he was seemingly trying to protect everyone, but whatever he did was looked down upon by everyone in town, specifically Toriel. In my opinion, we can start to flesh out a rough idea of events. Image Friend existed from long before the adventure began, watching over Noelle and presumably the others. He then lured the children into an area where the forest would grow. Is this the shelter? More than likely. After all, his pink and yellow eyes correspond to the colors that appear when getting and using the shelter key in the mantle minigame. Whatever it was that happened there, Chris tried to erase it from their mind. Noelle probably successfully repressed the entire memory. It's more than likely based on the sheer existence of Image Friend as well as Noelle's tendency to stand in front of the freezer and stare that whatever happened here involved a dark world. Whatever it was, I imagine Azrael probably didn't forget, hence why he's off to college, so that when he does come back, his knowledge will act as a sort of reveal. Once he comes back, I think all bets are off. We're learning about what happened to December. Anyways, whatever it was that happened, Asgore investigated, probably inside the shelter, and found something nobody believed. Whatever it was he did, the town looked down on him for it. It destroyed his marriage, his family, and his life. Now, December is still around in a body that has some resemblance to Image Friend, or at least some association with Friend. Asgore is still looking to figure out what exactly is going on, and Friend, the Tail from Hell, is watching over the entire adventure. This is a pretty safe assumption, and it's the assumption that pretty much most hardcore fans have at this point. Friend is an antagonist, the first sign of an actual villainous antagonist with plainly bad motivations, and he is, at least partially, the reason Dess is lost. There is an unfortunate question that must be asked here, though, and I mean, if you know me and what I like to talk about in these videos, you know exactly what I'm going to ask. What exactly is Friend's relation to the plot at large, but more specifically, Gaster, who we simply cannot avoid talking about? Well, first off, that first question. We sort of had a pretty good idea on how the plot was going to progress, even before chapters 3 and 4, but now we have an even clearer picture. There seems to be a prophecy that states the night will cause the roaring, the Titans will attack, and that saving the universe will require some sort of sacrifice that we don't fully understand. Also, the angel will be banished. That's all fine and dandy, but we've never truly known where any of that was actually going. The Titans, to me, never seemed like the point of Deltarune, the ultimate final hurdle, and they definitely don't now that we've defeated one. To me, there has always had to be some way to tie everything together by the ending, to give the weird route meaning beyond second scary route, to tie together December, the night, the secret bosses, etc. And for the longest time, that answer has always been, to me, Gaster. You can't really blame me. If I went back in time and told you that in chapters 3 and 4, it'll be revealed that a character is going to be introduced who is the reason that December went missing, has explicit ties to the shelter, is associated with hell, and is starting to seem like he's at the center of the entire story, you probably would have guessed that I'm talking about Gaster. I mean, I know I would have, because the role Friend is playing is exactly the role I expected Gaster to play. So let's ask the big question. Is Image Friend associated with Gaster, and is it the primary antagonist of Deltarune? When I say is he associated with Gaster, obviously he is in like the theoretical sense. I mean the literal sense. Are they associated? Are they palling around in the bunker? Determining who the primary antagonist is could be misconstrued as me dumbing down Deltarune's ideas and themes to make it easy YouTube clickbait. Who's the final boss, rather than, figuring out where the story is going. But here's the thing. When I say I want to find out who the primary antagonist is, I'm not saying that Deltarune needs an evil mustache-twirling big bad. I'm not saying there's going to be one evil above all evils who everyone else kneels to. However, every game has a primary antagonist, and whether that's a more literal interpretation, like demonic evil Gaster twiddling his mustache, or the prophecy itself is going to take the role of the main antagonist, in the sense that every character ultimately wants to break it, including us, there's still going to be a final barrier, an obstacle that wants us to fail that we have to overcome. So, I want to ask two questions here. Is Friend the game's primary antagonist, and again, is Friend associated with Gaster? Here's the easy answer. There are 6 candidates for what I consider the primary antagonist position. Chris, Carol, Knight, Titans, Friend, and Gaster. Going from least likely to the most likely, the Titans are personality-less beasts that are being used more as a destructive force than as entities that actually want to cause the end of the world or get in our way, so while we'll probably fight more of them, I don't think they are what the game is focused on. Chris, while a more likely candidate than most think for character who will be fighting us until the very end, is most likely going to have some emotional Omori moment where their past catches up to them, they face whatever it is they've blocked out of their mind, and they drop the barrier they've placed between us and them. I imagine at least that the ending of Deltarune is going to involve becoming friends with Chris, like how we hugged Asriel in Undertale. Carol is possible, but she seems more like angry Steven Universe lady who, once confronted by her daughter, realizes she's gone too far and ultimately learns the lesson, TM. If you know what I'm talking about there, you get what I'm saying. If not, I just don't think that Carol is big bad material, the final antagonist, the one who'd be willing to go the farthest for, whatever it is. She's like on a mission, you know what I mean? It's the same mission Chris is on, so I don't necessarily think she's going to be the final antagonist who wants to destroy the world. The Knight is possible, but again, as I said in a previous video, the Knight seems more a product of Dess's fall into darkness rather than a knowing evil being that wants to end the world. Obviously, we don't know exactly what the Knight is yet. It could be straight up December Holiday, who's just, a total jerk now, I guess, but the odds that the Knight is the final opponent, at least in my opinion, is slim to none. I imagine we'll be able to rescue December, to find her. So this leaves 2 other characters. Even if you believe that the Knight has all the reasons in the world to be the quote-unquote big bad, you cannot deny that the character that lured children into the place the forest should have grown and potentially caused Dess's disappearance is an even likelier candidate. Friend ties to every plotline. The prophecy explicitly warns against following its pointed tail. It seems to be tied to the shelter, which is obviously an endgame area. Considering the amount of build-up it's had, I would say Image Friend is an incredibly likely candidate to be this game's primary antagonist. Now, if that's true, I'd like to say one thing. I do not think he'll show up and say, "Hello, my name is Image Friend." We know that Gaster's naming scheme isn't exactly literal, like, the names that Gaster gives the songs is more of a scientific, and files, is more of a scientific look at things, rather than a literal name of the thing, if you get what I'm saying. So I don't think that image friend is just going to be a face that shows up and fights us and is like, I'm image_friend. I imagine that friend is going to have a name. I imagine that the reason Gaster called it friend has some significance, you know what I mean? So I think it's going to go beyond just being friend, and I don't think it's going to be a simple cat design either. It could be like the Cheshire Cat, but Noelle not remembering the egg's name tells me, at least, that there's some significance to that. I would suggest, because, you know, again, the whole, we don't want to say a name because it might have significance. Remember, before Chapter 3 and 4 came out, sorry to go off on a tangent for a bit, but before Chapters 3 and 4 came out, I made the suggestion that the reason that nobody has said December's name out loud is because they can't in a similar way to Gaster, or there's some significance to there. And then Tenno was like, no, Spookydood, you idiot, that's not true, because he straight up talked about December, and everybody talks about December now, and I was like, okay, whoops, I'm wrong. But so I will riskily dip my toes in again and say that the reason Noelle can't remember Image Friend's name is because, like Gaster, there's some significance. You can't. I don't know. Regardless, I think that Image Friend is a likely candidate to be the primary antagonist at the end of the day. Which leaves us with good old Gaster. Good old, useless, not a villain, but not quite a hero either, Gaster. Here's the deal with Walt Disney Gaster. I have since day one said that Gaster is the primary antagonist, that he is the devil, and I think there's still a fair argument for Friend and everything Friend related to ultimately be products of Gaster. For everything the Knight did, Friend was the root cause, but for everything Friend has done, Gaster is the root cause. What I mean is, we know the Tale of Hell is obviously associated with Hell, which Gaster is also associated with. We know the instances of Friend in the file names are in all caps, called Image Friend and Device Friend, which, if you believe most fan theories, because come on, they're obviously true, you'd know that possibly implies Gaster created Friend. After all, not only is Friend explicitly tied to the shelter through its eyes in the key dialogue, but the shelter is tied to Gaster because of the sound effects that play here. The shelter, associations with Hell, the file names, I think it's safe to say that Gaster and Image Friend are associated in some way. The problem here, though, is that everything past this goes into speculation. I think there are several different ideas that I can provide as to how Gaster and Friend might be linked. First off, Gaster is in an unexplained area called the Depths. He probably didn't fall from Undertale straight to Deltarune. The idea that he's in a sort of layer of darkness, aka the Code, makes more sense. Chances are, if he's from an area filled with strange darkeners, like in the image of Ralsei's explanation, perhaps Friend is another creature, similar to Gaster, from the deepest dark, and he's snuck into the Deltarune world to do his twisted deeds. Gaster and Friend, while similar and from the same general plane of existence, do not associate with one another and are not related beyond their general state of being. Gaster could, therefore, want us to fulfill the prophecy because he believes the tale must not be followed. Alternatively, Image Friend isn't a singular entity. We've seen Friend faces all over, Friend blobs and an image of Friend on what appears to be a generic darkener thing. Is there a chance that this isn't Friend and that, they're all Friend, that there isn't one specific Friend, that all these things are instances of the Friend creature, that Friend is a sort of generic darkener created from nothing rather than a specific character? He's a sort of darkener equivalent to a cat, if that makes sense. But the problem there would be, again, the tale that must not be followed, and the tale of Hell. That implies a singular tale that the children followed, which points towards there being one singular creature named Image Friend. Alternatively, and I know this one will probably annoy some of you, but what if Image Friend is Gaster's cat? Like, in the shelter, Gaster just has a cat, like Dr. Claw, and he does stuff for Gaster. Okay, I think you probably see what my problem is here. Image Friend, while not explicitly confirmed to be important, is going to be super important. He sits at the center of all plot lines, and if the theory that he caused Dess's disappearance is right, could end up being the big bad of Deltarune. However, he's associated with Gaster in many ways, and not just in an oh they're similar because they're mysterious way. They're both associated with Hell, he's got a weird file name, and they're both associated with the shelter. But implying that Image Friend is just another Gaster apparition seems like it would be a weird bait and switch. All this time just for Friend to be a Gaster shadow puppet would be pretty stupid. So you tell me, do you think that Gaster and Friend are two separate entities? Do you think they share a belief system? Are they working together, have nothing to do with one another, hate each other's guts? Do you think that Friend is going to be the central antagonist of Deltarune? That he's the one responsible for everything that happened in the story? Or do you think this is just fandom overshooting at its finest? Like how everything Chapter 2 teased suddenly became the most important thing in the world in the eyes of the fanbase, maybe Friend is going to be relevant to Chapter 5, but isn't some ultimate extremely important character. Maybe there's an area in Chapter 5 in which the forest should grow, and we follow a pointed tale leading us to a fight with Friend for the 5th and final Shadow Crystal. A choice that results in us trying to break the prophecy, hence the warnings against the tale being followed, and that's that! Or maybe he really is super important. I don't want this video to end on a non-statement. Me saying, who knows, let's all have fun, is boring. So what I'll say is this. I still think Gaster is going to be the primary antagonist of Deltarune, and ultimately more important than Device Friend. Do I think that this is the slowest slow burn of all time? Yes. Do I think it will pay off greatly by the end? Absolutely. However, whereas before I was worried about Gaster being a non-antagonist because nothing else felt as important as him, I am no longer worried so much. If it turns out I'm wrong, and Image Friend is the big threat of the game, and Gaster's more of a helpful onlooker, I'd be okay with that. I actually think that it could be pulled off pretty well, because again, Friend is in the role that I expected Gaster to be playing. It doesn't matter that it's not Gaster, there is still a mysterious, spooky, evil hell character. But the first time we ever got introduced to Gaster, the very first inklings of Deltarune, Toby's dream game that's taken over 10 years to come into existence, was when the river person said, "Beware the man who speaks in hands." If Gaster was such a good guy, I don't think we'd need to be wary of him. But admittedly, it's getting harder to believe that Gaster's going to be the big bad when Chapter 4 ends on such a high note, with Gaster sounding so positive and hopeful. Maybe he's a good guy. Maybe using the words good or bad is way too simple for the more complex character Toby's planned out. There's no way of knowing. What I do know is that Friend and the Friend plotline are most likely what will tie everything together. And that's sort of crazy. And that's where the trail ends. We don't have any explicit answers as to what Friend is going to be. It is a teaser, and unlike Chapter 2, where, people went really far with things, chess theory is confirmed, Chris is 100% the knight, which I was guilty of, I don't think that it's, I don't think we're at a point where we can really say anything about Friend that is concrete. I know that some people think he caused Dess's disappearance, and it definitely seems like that, but I wouldn't say it's 100%. I think that, it's open for interpretation, and I want to hear your interpretations in the comments, like I said. So that's where we're at for now. I'm not personally sure what I think. I'm sort of like 50-50, leaning between some kind of endgame Shelter Darkener who plays a very important role, but is sort of secondary to Gaster, or maybe Chapter 5 Secret Boss, whose entire relevance is specifically related to Chapter 5, and, the final Shadow Crystal, and the reason that he is dangerous is because he is trying to break the prophecy or something like that. So that's where I'm at. It is worth noting, it is actually interesting, if you want to find out Image Friend's motives, which we don't have right now, it's interesting that the prophecy and the organics tell you to avoid him, that it's the tale of hell, and that the tale that must not be followed. It's interesting because that sort of implies that Friend's motives are to break the prophecy. Again, to what end? I don't know. Could it be related to the weird route? Could Image Friend want the weird? I don't know. That, again, speculation. But that's where we're at right now. So thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I have a lot more to say about Deltarune in the future, obviously. Within the next few weeks, I'd like to do another theory review. So if you have any theories, send them to spookydoodtheories@gmail.com. spookydoodtheories@gmail.com, sorry. And like I said, if you have any Friend theories, please send them to me in the comments below. So, once more, thank you so much for watching. My name is Spookydood, and I will see you next time.